Svalbard, known for its Arctic isolation, polar bears, and the global seed vault, it is truly a beautiful and unique part of our world. You'll find it in the Arctic Ocean, roughly between Norway and the North Pole. On Svalbard, you will find one of the world's northernmost settlements, Ny-Ålesund, with its 30 to 130 inhabitants depending on the time of year. The settlement has been around since 1916 and was first used for mining operations. It was also conveniently located for explorations of the North Pole. The settlement was still around even after a major mining disaster in 1962 and the phasing out of mining activity. It is today centered around Arctic and environmental research, still serving a useful purpose 100 years after its founding. However, not all of Svalbard's settlements have survived the island's harshness, and there is one close to Ny-Ålesund that history almost forgot. This is the story of New London. Svalbard was in the early 1900s the site of much mining activity, as many different countries and companies seek to exploit the resources of what was at the time an archipelago whose legal and sovereign status was yet to be determined. It would become a part of Norway in 1920 after the signing of the Svalbard Treaty, but the treaty still allowed for other countries to do business on Svalbard. One of the companies seeking to exploit Svalbard's resources was the Northern Exploration Company, led by the Englishman Ernest Mansfield. Mansfield was born in London in 1862 and always had a keen eye for minerals and excavation. After spending time in Canada and Australia, he eventually went back to England and established a family. One day, he met a man by the name of Gardner, whom had been to Svalbard and apparently found loads of gold. This intrigued Mansfield, and in 1905 and 1906, he and Gardner traveled to Svalbard looking for gold and other valuable minerals. Mansfield would eventually find his way to Blomstrandøya, an island just outside of what is today Ny-Ålesund. However, instead of gold, what Mansfield found on the island was beautiful, pinkish marble. So much, in fact, that it was described as an island of pure marble. Camp Mansfield, which would become better known as New London, was established, and infrastructure needed for excavation was set up in 1911. The settlement was made to accommodate up to 70 people. Railway, machines, wagons, cranes, and steam engines were brought to the remote settlements, as there was an unprecedented optimism about the profits that could be made from the Marble Island. It looked like it was going to be the start of a beautiful adventure for Mansfield and his men. Unfortunately, what first looked promising for New London would quickly turn out to be a total disaster. Mansfield had eagerly promoted the marble's beauty and had secured good investments for building up the necessary infrastructure to extract it. After years of talk and preparations, it was time for the first big shipments. It was time to make the settlement commercially viable. As the first marble was shipped from the island in 1912 and the shipment approached England, something was happening to the marble. It was crumbling. The quality of the marble turned out to be terrible, as the permafrost had damaged it. As it was shipped away from the Arctic to a warmer climate, the marble started to crumble, and it had become mostly gravel by the time the voyage was over. The marble Mansfield presented was of low quality and therefore of no interest to potential buyers. All the time, energy and investment that had gone into New London was for nothing. He was kicked from his own Northern Exploration Company in 1913 as furious investors blamed him for the failures of New London. During World War I, operations in the settlement were shut down, and by 1920, New London was abandoned, and the remains of the settlement were sold off to Norway 12 years later. Today you can still see some of New London's remains. Machinery, wagons, and a crane are still there after more than 100 years of abandonment. Some houses are still standing, and a few have been moved to Ny-Ålesund since the settlement's closure. It's interesting to think about what New London could have been had it not been abandoned. Perhaps it would have taken on a different role, similar to how Ny-Ålesund became a point for Arctic exploration and research. At least its remains make for an interesting travel destination. Thank you for watching my video, and until next time.